Okay, so to get on topic, I have a terrible dad joke.
Oh
So,
God. Okay.
what is the name of the corniest Jedi?
Oh no. What is the name of the corniest Jedi?
Mace Windu.
Oh, that's terrible.
Yes, it's terrible. But that got us on track to talk about a scene that I just freaking love that never really gets talked about, and that's when Mace just completely goes out of the window.
Yeah, he gets completely zonked out by the lightning, right?
Yeah, so the reason that that scene is so interesting to me is that him getting thrown out of the window was actually like a really pivotal part of the film as far as the audience and their connection with Anakin and them seeing his fall, because
Right.
like if you think about it, that was the first time that we never actually see Anakin kill anyone. We never see him kill the younglings. All he did was cut off Mace's arm there, and technically Palpatine is the one who killed him. If you imagine that scene differently with Mace's body, like if he were decapitated or something, and then he's just left laying in the room there while Anakin is turning to the dark side, and now you have a dead body that's a physical depiction of Anakin's turn to evil, which is something that we've never had. And it
You think
reminded me.
that'd be too dark for a
Yeah.
kids movie to just have this corpse in the background while he's getting knighted
Yeah.
Darth Vader?
I guess that's kind of the problem of trying to go between something that might be good for the story and good for character development versus what you're trying to a certain tone that you're trying to stick to with the story. And the reason this whole thing popped into my mind was thinking about the recent videos that I did about Padme, and how when she is confronting Anakin and telling him, don't do this, come back to me, on all this kind of stuff, that scene is so pivotal because from the audience's perspective, that's when they are seeing, oh, he's now a bad guy. Oh, we're seeing the anguish that she is suffering. We haven't actually seen another character suffering. We've seen Yoda and Obi-Wan sad while they're watching the recordings and stuff, but this is the first person to person thing, and I realized that's why it was so important for Mace's body to be thrown out of the window. It wasn't just some like random decision that George made. It was like a very intentional story point that let's kill him, let's get him out of there, but let's not dwell on it. Let's come back to this.
See, that's so interesting to me, because I think it's also, I like what you said there about it's the first time, the follow-on from that is the first time we see someone else suffering, like, instead of just Anakin, because I think a lot of what we get of his turn to the dark side is his internal kind of world where he's just like constantly in pain, and every time he tries to reach out, the way that he reaches out, like he's just self-involved enough that when he's reaching out for help to the people around him, he's doing it in such a way that is just self-involved enough that people instinctively like flinch and are like, fucking leave me alone. So it's kind of interesting, yeah, that this scene is him, this is the first time he's killed a person, or at least what the movies consider to be a person, because we did watch him kill all those sand people. But I think anytime you put the word people after a description, I think it's safe to say the movie doesn't count them as people. But even that hurt him, right? He's like, I look at all what I've done, Padme. I'm in a lot of pain about this. And she's like, anger makes you human, right? But this is the first time, you're right, that we see him do something really heinous. But it's also interesting to me that Mace gets, I almost said Dooku, that Mace gets thrown out the window, because this is like, Jedi's bodies not being, on the floor is like a thing that starts to happen a lot in Star Wars, where it's like you have to have like a magical wizard's death, right? Luke fades away into dust or whatever the hell happened, sunrise. I can't remember most of that film. Like Yoda does the same thing. He just like vanishes. There's something about the coding of that I find really cool in this scene, because the idea that like, even though Mace gets completely murked by Anakin and then lightninged out this window, the implication here is that, there is something, it's a magical death in some sense for Mace. Like he's afforded this, he doesn't get the kind of grotesqueness of his corpse on the ground. He gets to exit the scene, I was going to say gracefully, but I mean, I don't know if getting thrown out a window by lightning is graceful, but yeah, there's certainly something there about like, the kind of rhyming of this series and the way that stuff carries through. But yeah, no, you're totally right. I can imagine a different version of the scene where you've just got the body in the corner. It's it's a bit of a different tone.
Yeah. I guess one interesting thing that we have to consider is that Lucas may have also done this on purpose because he was actually planning that Mace was not dead. I mean, that's been a fan theory for a long time, because like Mace literally jumps out of skyscrapers and lands on cars like we see Anakin do at some point.
It's Samuel Jackson has his own fan theory about Mace Windu surviving. Do you know about this? He's been going around for years being like, I have a theory as to how he survived. It's basically what you're saying. He gets his hand chopped off and he, lands on a speeder and then he gets away and then he gets an awesome fake hand because Star Wars. And then, he goes off and does Mace Windu Adventures, which is a TV show I would absolutely watch, by the way.
We know Jedi's can fall from incredible heights and survive. So apparently I am not dead. Yes, I have 2 appendages right now, but we know the long and rich history of Star Wars characters reappearing with new appendages and being stronger and better than they ever were. Mace Windu is awaiting his return. Let's make it happen. Kathy?
Yes.
Like, that'd be a great spin-off. The Adventures of Mace Windu, just about Coruscant with the sweet fake hands, like doing all kinds of weird, cool Jedi stuff.
Yeah. That's been rumored for a long time, and Star Wars Theory. I don't know if you've watched any of his stuff, but his part 2 of the Vader Immortal or whatever the name of his series was.
That's right, yeah.
But it was actually focusing on Mace coming back. I don't know if that's still going forward in production or not, but it was still really interesting for him to, broach what so many fans have talked about for a long time.
It's such an interesting... I mean, Star Wars is very like this, where I think, because a lot of the storytelling is quite metaphorical, as opposed... And I think it's because it's picking up the traditions of those kind of, episodic sort of space fantasies that Lucas was basing it off. The idea is that you kind of come into them... You always feel like you're partway into a story. You never quite have a full picture of what's going on because the story is always moving in different directions and you never quite have all of the threads of the puzzle. And that's why I think people become so engendered in the universe and so engaged in theorizing, is like, because there's rarely a definitive kind of, oh, this is what's happening and this is why it's happening. You're always kind of like reading between the lines, which, I mean, this scene's also interesting to me because it comes off the back of, Anakin's decision to go to that room is essentially his, in a video essay I did forever ago, I kind of argued that it's that moment where he becomes Darth Vader, not actually intervening. It's the minute he decides to go to Sidious. It's when he's sitting in the Jedi Council chambers and he's just like in his own head about it, right? He's staring across the city and he's in his own head about this decision he's about to make. And he gets up and he leaves, and that's his decision that's when he becomes Darth Vader, is going to intercede, right? He's already decided, I am going to go and help Sidious because I need that power, right? Or he's like, I'm going to stop Mace from killing Sidious. And then I guess in his head, the alternate outcome is that Sidious will teach him these Sith powers while in prison. Anyway, Anakin's plan is not good here, but Anakin's never been a good planner, so let's not fault him for that one here. What do you think about the fact that Mace loses a hand before he gets thrown out the window?
I mean, that is a very Star Wars thing to do. I've heard that levied against the sequel trilogy, that they never had anyone's hand chopped off, although I'm not sure. It may be a hallmark of Star Wars, but I don't know if it's really such an integral thing that it absolutely has to be there.
I love the idea that fans are like, man, the narrative was bad and the ending didn't make sense. I didn't like that second one, but you know what really bugged me about them trilogies? Not the women or the SJW cucks coming in, but you know what it was? It was nobody's hand got taken off, man, and that's just Star Wars. You got to cut somebody's hand off.
There's not enough mutilation. Like, this isn't the Saw series. I mean,
nobody lost a limb. God damn it! Actually, I think that's even true. So this is a thing that is like rooted in Star Wars, right? This starts with Darth Vader, which is the kind of metaphorical analog happening here, which is that the less human you are, like the more non-human components you have, the less humanity you have, which is obviously like deeply ableist and problematic in retrospect. But this roots all the way back to like the 50s and 60s. But the idea that losing one's hand or losing bits of one's body and then replacing them with mechanicals is like signifiers for losing parts of one's humanity, right? So like I think it's interesting. Anakin loses his hand in that saber fight with Dooku. It's the first step, and then you see at that wedding scene, he's got that weird, creepy, like gold ass skeleton hand, which is the most like 17-year-old kid move of all time. He's like, give me the fly as hell one with all the bejeweled shit on it. Give me that Gucci hand. But like, and then obviously in the next film, that's his turn to the dark side, right? Grievous is the kind of proto Vader, where it's like the still organic pieces, but he's kind of really fucked up and weird. And there's an extent to which it is dishonorable to have taken his hand before he dies, because it's like you're stripping away humanity before killing him. But then obviously he's redeemed by not having his corpse and having that kind of magical death. So there's like some apparatus here that Lucas is playing with of showing exactly what you were talking about, showing Anakin turning to that darkness, right? If he was going to go for the honorable blow here, he wouldn't have cut Mace's hand. He would have batted the saber away and been like, let's fight, man. Like, there would have been some other outcome here. Instead, Lucas gets the best of both worlds, where Anakin can still be disrespectful or dishonorable, if you like, and take this guy's hand, which is taking some of his humanity. And then by lightning him out the window, you don't have the weight of the body in the room. And now I just thought of the very funny alternative, which is you're still lightning him out the window, but the hand's still in the room, which is very funny. Just on the windowsill.
Because, Sidious would totally pick that up and be like flopping it around while he's talking to Anakin.
He'd use that tonight later. Yes. He put the saber in the thing's hand and have it just... This is why we can't have nice things, right?
I had like 5 legitimate things to talk about, and now I'm just imagining the floppy dead hand.
I put it out to Darth, and then the saber like rolls onto the floor.
But no, because like everything you were talking about, like that's legit out of like the samurai code, right? Like you can only get a killing blow, and maiming them is considered like a dishonor to yourself. Does that sound familiar?
This is, and obviously with the amount that this lifts from the kind of Seven Samurai type source material, it's really clear to me that there is some coding here. The fact that they wear the robes, I mean, people talk about this to death, but it's definitely that kind of vibe, which is interesting to me because Qui-Gon Jinn, right, he gets the most honorable death, which is he just gets run through once, and then his body is on the floor because it's a motivator for Obi-Wan to take up his mantle, right? Whereas in this scene, there's nothing honorable about what's going down here. Whereas I think with that scene in particular, and there's something I want to talk about in the third film as it pertains to that at some point, but there's definitely you're right, there is something using that coding of the honor system of the samurai, or at least the Western imagination of the samurai kind of in how they construct honor. Because it's pretty messed up to cut a dude's hand off and then he doesn't even we have no proof that Mace Windu isn't dead. If Anakin was going to be a real one, he would decapitate Mace Windu. That would be the move, right? Instead, he gets his hand chopped off and thrown out the window. We have no proof that lightning killed him. He may still be alive until he hits the ground. That's a pretty grisly way to dispatch your foe, right? Mace has got a long time between... They're on the 275th floor of a Coruscant fucking skyscraper, right? He's got a long time to consider what all his mistakes were before he hits the ground, And Mace, correctly, is I never trusted this kid. And he makes the mistake once of trusting Anakin. It gets him killed. So,
I mean, another interesting way to think about it is, I don't know how much thought Lucas put into it, but if they had Mace die there and stay in the room, then they would have had to explain the concept that he didn't turn into a ghost, just like Qui-Gon didn't turn into ghost, which in the context of the story is because they didn't learn how to do that until at the end of episode 3, when Qui-Gon had halfway transferred into being a Force ghost, so he could exist as an incorporeal spirit, so he could appear to Yoda as a voice.
Oh my God,
but he couldn't.
Right.
So I don't know how much of that you actually knew, because that's not really explained too much. But
I didn't think about. Well, it's from a deleted scene in Revenge of the Sith, which is where Yoda's like Obi-Wan has just killed his best friend, he thinks, right, and left him burning alive. He's had the most harrowing day of his life, and Obi-Wan still covered in ash, right, the same day, hasn't even had time to have a shower. Yoda's like, hey, man, listen, your old master, I talked to him. He's not dead. He worked out immortality. And Obi-Wan's like, I'm busy. I got other stuff on my mind, dude. Can I have a shower first? Can I hit the lockers? What are we doing? Yeah, but it's from a deleted scene. And then what you end up with in the movie is just like this throwaway comment of like, yes, Qui-Gon, Qui-Gon found the immortality he did, or whatever the hell, instead of that expository bit. But no, you're right. That is, there's no way for, Mace he seems like he would have worked it out. Mace seems like he's kind of, he seemed like a pretty smart Jedi. I feel like if he did have the opportunity to lie on the ground, he'd be like, yeah, I worked out that ghost stuff way before all of you. You took how many years? You took 20 years, dude? Man, what you been doing? Out here sleeping on the job. I did it like that. He's like 2 minutes in. He's like, oh, yo, I'm a ghost now. Check it out.
That's actually the proof that he's not dead, because his ghost would have showed up a long time ago.
Instantly. And with a full head of hair, too. He's like, I worked that out, too. I'm going to be bald in the eternity. I'm getting that hair back. But no, it's a cool scene, and I think I like exploring the prequels in this kind of retrospective light, because I think like a lot of us, they aren't very good movies, but they have a lot to chew on, and like a lot that you kind of can work through and think about, and the implications, and you can see a lot of the things Lucas was shooting for, and whether they work or not for specific people and in specific moments. I think it's really cool to kind of try and unpack it. But yeah, really cool scene. Also. Really cool lighting effects. There's a moment where like you can see a bit of his skull. Yeah, it's coming. It's right as hell.
You see the same thing with Vader when he's getting electrocuted in Episode 6, which is pretty cool that they kind of duplicated that same thing.
Damn.
But just looking at this fight scene,
he does the weird frogman flip.
I know. But this fight scene in itself, even before like everything we're talking about, like this is something I would love to see get remade at some point. Because like the description of the fight in the book is one of the like coolest things that I've ever read, and just what comes across on screen is not that,
No. Also, so he kicks. I just noticed he kicks Sidious's saber out the window.
Yeah, and then he magically has it again later on, right?
Does he?
Yeah, because he fights Yoda with it. So,
oh my God, you're right.
Yeah, so he makes someone go down there and score the streets of Coruscant.
Yo, the clone that has to go do that job. That's like the clone intern. It's like, hey, Frank. Yeah, what's up? You go find that lightsaber. Oh, come on, don't make me go, dude. He's in there in the muck and like checking like behind trash cans and stuff. Worst day of clone training ever.
There's something else I noticed just like scrolling through it. Just look at, because like you were talking about how that was the time when Anakin made the decision to become Vader and everything. But look how chill he is when he's walking up right here.
Okay, let's peep it. Okay, we got.
Look, he's jogging now. He's walking. He starts. Yes, he starts like sauntering when he's going in.
Well, because he doesn't think that Mace will kill him. Right?
I guess Anakin, not, but see, the way that he approaches, it really looked to me like he had not fully decided, like he felt like he had to be there. That was my interpretation of it. It's like he hadn't decided one way or the other. He just couldn't sit there and not do anything anymore. He had to go see what was happening.
Yes, but that's my argument for why it's the decision to become Darth Vader, because giving into that fear is his choice to become Vader. Giving into his anxiety of not being in control, that's the thing that makes him into the dark side, right? That's what the story tells us repeatedly, it's that decision. Because Anakin's whole thing is that his anxiety about losing the people around him manifests into anger, right? Where he's like, I will force my way through and keep people safe. And so that decision to be like, I have to be there is his inability to trust Mace Windu to get the job done, because he's so anxious about losing Padme. And so by extension, he's anxious about losing Sidious. And so my argument there is that this is like, that's why that moment to me is so pivotal of him becoming Vader, is it's giving into that, the fear. And fear leads to hatred, and hatred leads to bad coaching from your monk boss or whatever.
I really like that. I really like that interpretation. I hadn't thought about it that way. And that also made me realize something else about this scene, was that think about if Anakin had not shown up, I think Mace didn't make the decision to kill Palpatine until Anakin was arguing and saying, don't kill Palpatine. Because it was...
Yeah, because Mace was like, well, I wasn't trying to...
Yeah, but it was almost like a reverse psychology thing, because it really didn't seem like the whole he's too dangerous to be left alive thing even started until Anakin was saying, I need him alive, and all of this kind of stuff. And I wonder if Mace had just had a second to calm down after he was like, okay, I got the dude. Am I really going to kill him? Am I going to be that guy? Or am I just going to, like, handcuff him, and then he can't lightning me?
Yeah, he would have had so many opportunities between, like, handcuffing him, right? Like, cuffing that dude, walking him all the way to the lifts, going down the lifts, getting him to transport, sitting on the transport, going to the There are a lot of opportunities along that way to kill him. There's a lot of breathing room there where Mace could be like, am I doing the right thing? Instead, Anakin comes in and he's like, you can't kill him, you can't do... And Mace is like, well, I don't trust this fucking kid, and I never have. So if Anakin said, don't turn left, Mace Windu would be like, I fucking turn left. I'll pull up on the scam and turn left. Like, I just think he's like, I don't trust this kid as far as I can throw him. I genuinely think you're right. I think it's being told, don't do it. Mace Windu's like the Qui-Gon Jinn in him is like, a Jedi's telling me not to do something. That means I best be doing it.
No, like an interesting thing is that in the context of the story, that it actually makes a lot of sense that the line that he says is he has control of the Senate and the courts. He's too dangerous to be left alive. So it wasn't the fact that he was a Sith Lord that made him dangerous. It was all of the political power that he wielded. And in the novel, like, it talks a lot about how Mace's biggest thing, that he loves the Republic and he loves democracy like more than anyone. For whatever reason, that's his thing. And he loves the idea that
Mace Windu, that's his jam.
That's it. Yeah.
Democracy is his jam.
For whatever reason. But so the idea that it is not fair and it is not equal to everyone, like, really annoys him. So the fact that that's what he's focused on, you know, him having control of the Senate and the courts would be the reason to kill him, because that's not his democracy. That's not what he loves.
Oh my God. That's such like the guy that peaked in high school type vibes from Mace on that one, because like Mace Windu's like, I think that everybody should have a fair shot and all things should be equal and even, because if all things are equal and even, Mace will always be on top. He's like the best sword fighter. He's got amazing control of the Force. He's in a tremendous position of authority on the council. Like, he's such the guy who's like, I just think everything should be equal. And everyone should be treated the same, so I can keep my millions and stay in my McMansion. Like, that's like such like, that's so funny to me. But no, that is interesting. Okay, so it's the political, but then he lobbies the argument of like, well, you know, we gotta. In fact, I don't even think he's gonna kill him until he starts doing the lightning fingers, right? He's got the laser sword pointed at this guy's neck, and he's like, just everybody relax. And then Anakin starts yelling at him, and then Sidious takes that opportunity to try the lightning thing up, which, by the way, he must know that you can deflect lightning with a laser sword, right? He must have seen that somewhere. He watched the second Star Wars film where he saw Yoda do that, you know?
Yeah, I mean, I guess no one has seen a Sith, according to them, since Darth Maul, which he didn't use any lightning, and Mace never even saw him.
Didn't Dooku use lightning?
No,
Did Dooku use lightning? Hang on,
I guess well, yeah, against Yoda he did. But the real question is, did that ever happen when, like in the Clone Wars or anything, when Mace was fighting Dooku? If that ever happened, because I haven't actually finished the whole thing. I'm partway through.
Almost certainly. I can't remember, but almost certainly.
But that's the question, is like, would he actually ever have faced a Sith so that he knew? Or, I mean, that's actually really easy information for Yoda to say, hey, 1,000 years ago when I fought a Sith, just, you know, hold up your sword.
Just like heads up.
Yeah. I mean,
this is their playbook or whatever. But that's what I mean. Like, Sidious should know that he knows this is coming. Like, Sidious's lightning move here makes no sense.
Well,
unless it's only a trap to get Anakin to intervene, in which case, dumb plan. Like, dumb plan.
And from the, like, I guess to defend the Jedi, it shouldn't take any conscious thought at all to know that whatever is coming at you, you hold up your sword to block it. Doesn't matter if it's a blaster bolt or magic lightning that you have never seen before. Either way, you have a thing that blocks everything. So
you have a tool that can do basically everything. It's a laser sword, guy. Just do this. And he does that, but like, what's Sidious's game here? Is he's going to do the lightning, and Mace Windu is going to be like, "Oh my God, what's that?" and like move his sword aside, the sword that's already in his face. It's just there's I don't understand and this is where I think the Lucas role in all of this comes into play, which is there are so many things that work so well, and then a modest amount of scrutiny makes you go, I didn't really think all of this through, just some of it.
Yeah, if this was not the pivotal moment where Anakin was making his decision to turn, then it would not make any sense. And that's why the scene in episode 9, when Rey blows him up, makes zero sense at all. Because him keeping, he keeps pushing the lightning like he's going to break through her 2 lightsabers or something.
Like that's a thing that's ever happened.
Yeah, but and everyone made fun of it, rightfully so, because there's no purpose to him suffering, whereas this scene has a purpose to him suffering.
Okay, I could see that. I get that. I get that on a metaphorical level. I just think on a scene level blocking, like you could have prevised this, and someone in the storyboarding stage should have been like, I don't think it makes sense for Sidious to lightning him like that. Like there are a lot of opportunities where someone should have said no, but as we know, nobody says no to George. So yeah. I just think it's a really cool and interesting scene.
Well, think about it. No one said no to J.J. Abrams. No one said no to Rian Johnson. No one said no to Abrams again. Like,
well, the problem was that when it got to the point where they got Abrams back in, they were like,
we done messed up, guys. They're like,
we done a bad one, actually. Do what you can, but there's no saving this. I think, look, I would pay an irresponsible amount of money to see the final movie redone by Johnson. I think that would be so fascinating as an exercise, just to see what that script would look like.
I actually would not, like, I am not a fan of him, and I still am refusing to see Knives Out for a little while until I fully recover in my soul.
I've been trying to. I'll badger you into it over time. I'll just keep nagging.
But I would enjoy seeing an entire trilogy. If he had done 7, 8, and 9, it could have been good.
If anyone had planned any of it whatsoever,
yes.
It could have been good.
Because I don't mind a lot of the choices, that I could see what he was going for, and some of them could have been really cool. But the fact that it seemed like he intentionally just said, screw everything before it, screw everything after it, I'm doing something different that you won't be able to follow at all. So it's like he made a standalone movie and knew he was making a standalone movie. I mean,
it's kind of hard as hell, though, isn't it?
Yeah.
Like to me to come in and be like, hey, what's going on? Let me try this one out. Besides, what are you guys doing? How do you think about this? I don't know. I kind of respect that. I kind of think it's cool. Even if it did really paint them into a hole. And there were ways out of it, and there was clearly direction that you could have gone with that. And Disney went, absolutely not. That sounds too much like accidentally doing a story that could be interesting, which risks offending people. That's a much larger conversation. And we will at some point talk about that scene with Sidious and Rey, because I have a lot of thoughts there.
We need to talk about how they built up the transition between episode 8 and episode 9, because if they had stuck with what Ryan set up, which should have been impossible to get around, 9 could have been really darn interesting.
That's what I mean. You've got all the pieces in the puzzle box, guys. You just gotta take a risk. And I think taking a risk is so antithetical to what Disney do these days. Writ large, not necessarily individual projects, but kind of as a broad strokes, right? There is such an anxiety with taking risks, because that may not sell enough tickets, and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. You know, the capitalist rant. But it is interesting to me that you're right. The difference between the prequel trilogy and the sequel trilogy is the prequel trilogy were always about something. Even if the way that they were about that something was pretty poorly handled sometimes, they're all about Anakin's transition into becoming Darth Vader. How does he get there? And they fumble it, and it's insufferable at times, but at least it's kind of all going somewhere. And that at least gives it direction in a way that, you're right, some of the other stories in Star Wars really struggle with that, particularly the sequel trilogy. It is unfortunate.
I was actually hypothesizing the other day about what if they had not made the prequels focus so much on Anakin and had him be more of a kind of a side plot of him falling to the dark side, and they focused a whole lot more on the Jedi. And you could cover the political stuff without it being so political that it gets bogged down. But when you really look at it, the entire point of the prequels was the clones and the war. Anakin was a complete byproduct. He didn't matter at all. Like, his turn to the dark side did not create the Empire. It did not put Sidious in power. He was actually...
No, Jar Jar did.
I will do a 4-hour movie about Darth Jar Jar.
Jar Jar did. Jar Jar was like, he's like, hey, we should give this guy the supreme powers or whatnot. Mm-hmm. It was his, he did it. Padme was gone for like 5 minutes. She's like, I need to take a leak. You're my representative. Jar Jar, don't screw it up. And she comes back. She's like, you Jar Jar democracy, my dude. How did you do that? I was gone for 2 minutes. And he's given the supreme powers to the... it's crazy.
And the interesting thing is, like, after that, they kept him around. Like, all throughout the Clone Wars, he's still going on, like, missions with them and stuff.
I have a clip that I want to show you in the future of my favorite and one of the worst pieces of Star Wars ever that involves Jar Jar pretending to be a Jedi. So look forward to that.
Yes.
It's one of my favorite scenes of all time. It's a lot.
Yes, it was so ridiculous. I had to turn off my brain, and then I enjoyed it.
I think it's very fun. I think there's a lot of things in it which are really revealing about the ways in which these characters know more than they let on, and people are really good at not saying exactly what they mean in a really interesting way. Also, just circling back to your point about politics, I would have made it more political if I was going to rewrite these prequels. I would have lent into the politics more, because I have a theory about politics in like movies and books and stuff, which is that politics is good actually, and people like politics actually. What the issue is, it's just when they're shown politics they don't like, or that they don't agree with. That's what people have an issue with, not the idea of politics in content, because it's really interesting. I would have gone like way more into that and made it a lot more about the ways in which this warrior race of kind of monks and their involvement in the political sphere is like deeply complicated, because you've sort of got democracy and the Senate writ large, which is this body that have kind of with so many representatives that it's almost ineffectual, right? That's something that Anakin in his I'm a fascist speech in the second movie touches on, which is the idea of like, there are too many moving parts, there are too many opinions for this to be an effective mechanism. You've got that on one side, and then these kind of this race of ultra powerful, secretive, kind of superpowered warrior monks who act with such autonomy that they almost have their own kind of autocratic, like, not rule over the government. They can kind of bypass the way the Senate works. You see that multiple times with them just kind of making executive decisions, and everybody goes, well, it's the Jedi. What else are you going to do about it? And that to me is really interesting, and could make for like 3 really compelling movies of like, what does that mean for the people who wield those powers? Like, when you are a Jedi, what does that responsibility actually mean, that you can circumvent democracy to impose your will on a situation? What does that mean for you on a personal level? So if you were still going to do Anakin's story, what does it mean on a personal level? How does that change the way you view the world? Like, you would become the guy that's like, I can do anything, potentially. Or you become Mace Windu, who's like, actually, democracy's great. Like, there are so many compelling threads to pull on. Instead, you know, it's not that. It's a bunch of other stuff that is fine, but is never quite good. That second movie is almost unwatchable at times because of some of this stuff and the way that politics is rendered to be about individuals rather than systems. And I think that's probably Star Wars' biggest kind of swing and miss, I suppose, in some sense. The Clone Wars gets it real later, the animated series, but certainly the movies view politics as individuals exerting their will on the structures rather than the way that structures change the way individuals can impose their will. And I just think that misalignment is sometimes where Star Wars gets a bit not lazy, but you can tell that there's some of that post kind of Two Towers War on Terror stuff creeping in, of like, the reason that George is painting these politicians that way is because that's the way that the politicians of the time are behaving. Is they're like, I'm an individual and I will make decisions, and we are individual heroes in politics. It is not systems. It is about individual people. It's about the goodies versus the baddies. It's about us versus this enemy we've found. And no, we've killed that enemy. Let's invent a new one. The Star Wars prequels, I could talk about this for hours, but the Star Wars prequels do this very, very well. Who's the first baddie? It's Darth Maul. We've killed them. Okay, we need to find a new baddie to focus on in the Senate. And the Jedi. Okay, it's Dooku. Okay, we've dispatched Dooku. Who's the next baddie? And it's just that forever because it justifies the spending and it justifies the clones and it justifies the death and the war machine and the increasing powers provisioned to Sidious. And there is something about Lucas's apprehension of where democracy was going and where it eventually got us to in 2018, 2019, that is oddly prescient for a man who also thought that Jar Jar was a good idea. So I don't know. Is he a genius or a fool? No one can say.
Well, I want to latch on to one thing that you just mentioned, which was really fascinating. And you were talking about the Jedi and how this mystical band was granted so much power in this democracy. They were like not quite dictators in the democracy, but it was pretty darn close. Like if the Jedi Council says something, I'm pretty sure they would have anyone arrested without trial if they had decreed, the Force told me to.
Yeah,
and
they're more like secret police or something.
But the interesting thing about it is like, think about the real world comparison, and it would, pick your religion, but like if Christians could literally prove with physical actions that their religion was real, which the Jedi can do. They can move stuff. They can control people. They can prove that the Force is real. If that happened in real life, like the Christian sect or whatever sect that could physically prove that stuff, they would be in control of whatever government there was because they could prove that a higher being was real and that they controlled that power. So it's completely believable that the Jedi Order would have as much power as they do inside that democracy, because the same would be true for us.
Absolutely. That's really interesting. Yeah, you would absolutely be like, you know what, you guys do your thing. I'm going to stay out of your way. Don't laser sword me, please.
Yeah.
Like, you don't want to meet a Jedi that disagrees with you in a dark alley, right? Like there is, and we see a bit of that in the second film as well, where like seeing Jedi go into full cop mode, right? The first sort of half of that film is like a noir detective story for Obi-Wan when they're in that nightclub, and they're in full cop mode and they dispatch this person and Obi-Wan turns to everybody. He's like, it's Jedi business. Go back to what you were doing. That is like it's so interestingly indicative of the way that they're treated in society. Like the second that he's like, it's Jedi business, people are like, okay, I am staying the hell away from that. There's an understanding here that these guys are news and they're not always going to be good news if you get in the way. And that to me is really compelling. As an apparatus of storytelling that Lucas really doesn't seem to know what he wants to do with. And that's kind of why I find the way that that's why I find the Old Republic stuff so compelling and interesting as a concept in storytelling. Is I find it fascinating to see these guys as part of society. It's cool when they become mythologues and no one's really sure if they exist. And, the Mandalorian does a really good job with that. But like seeing them in action and seeing them interact with just regular folk is so fascinating, and it's part of why I love the Clone Wars TV show, is you get to see so much more of that, and the way that people, when they misread Jedi and Jedi's intentions, it doesn't go well for them. You got to be playing ball with these guys or you're going to get yourself into trouble, and that's a really compelling kind of archetypal character to be able to continually deploy. Plus I like their swords are cool. That's the other thing. So I like they get a little different colors and stuff. Darth, what color laser sword would you have if you could have? What's your color move?
I'd probably totally be evil and have a red one.
Yeah, I feel like that's the move, isn't it?
I mean, I'd be down the gray Jedi path, and I'm like, if you're a bad guy, you're getting decapitated. Like, you don't need a trial. I mean,
you're full Mace Windu. Yeah. Do you think? Okay, you're more like Qui-Gon then. Okay, because Qui-Gon was like, rules are for suckers. I love all his like extended universe stuff where everybody's like, hey, Qui-Gon, here's the Jedi Code and the Jedi Council. He's like, yeah, cool. I don't care. I'm doing what I'm gonna do anyway. You don't even know about it. They're like, we cannot take this kid on. He's too young. Qui-Gon's like, too late. He's already here. Like he just does not care. Yeah, I could see. Well, but you couldn't do red though because you can't. I suppose you could corrupt your own crystal, but that's not going to end well for you. I think having a red lightsaber is like they might sniff you out too soon.
That'd be fine with
it. Could you like I'm just gonna be full Sith. Teach me how to do the cool lightning thing. The choke. Show me the choke thing. I want to invade people's minds.
Right? I'm like, if you want to torture someone, you've got all of this stuff, and you could be the bad cop, but you're still a cop. I mean,
it's just you and Sidious's like sitting room. You're like, teach me the chokey thing. He's like, what? Yeah, teach me. I want to do the when you grab him and they can't. And then the zap. He's like, what do you? Who I? Get out of my office. Like, what about and you're like, in the later films when they freeze people and then you go into their brains, can you do that? He's like, what are you fucking doing? Get the hell out of here. I'm working, man.
Just imagine this like really nervous dude walking in and sitting down in Sidious's office, and he's like, "Hey, can you teach me spirit fingers?"
Sidious is like on the holocron with like another senator. He's like, I'm on Zoom right now. he's like working from home with the kids. He's like, I can't talk right now. I'm on a call. And you're like, spirit fingers in the background. He's like, sorry, can you just hold? You're being very distracting. Can you sit still? Just you're like trying to do it in the background. You're like, that's why Darth shouldn't be in Star Wars.
All right. Well, at the risk of going another 2 hours, let's call that. What do you think?
Sounds good. Yeah.